Hey Science Crew! We are just beginning to explore what evolution is, and we talked about all these different species about 2 weeks ago, and this diversity of life that we have on our planet. Diversity comes from this process of evolution. Okay, it's this changing over time from common ancestors. And this really seeks to explain how the species we have today come from single-celled organisms in the past. Okay, like these archaebacteria. These are some single-celled organisms that were kind of around billions of years ago, and they evolved into these complex organisms that looks like some sort of praying mantis, and a strange-looking flower that looks like a duck, and of course the rock. These are all complex multicellular organisms. Okay, but it's a lot more complicated than that. Okay, there's this tree of life kind of thing. They call these the phylogenetic trees, and everything kind of branches off of them. Okay, but they evolved from this main species, right? This one or two species right here, and this one's a little bit more complicated. It shows that there's some vertebrates on there and some trees, but even this is really a simplified version of the tree of life. Check this out. Okay, look closely at this. Can you find where humans are? We are a tiny little blip on this evolutionary scale. If you look at the bottom here, this is a timeline. Okay, so they estimate that about, 3,000 million years ago, which would be 3 billion years ago, life started to form. Okay, and everything branched out from there. And we are actually way over here. Tiny branch on this tree of life. Okay. And if you're wondering what these gaps are, these are dinosaurs. And these actually are extinct now. So if you didn't know that, it should be pretty obvious. We don't have dinosaurs walking around. But this gap here is they lived and then they died. There was nothing that evolved from them. Okay. So let's keep going. How does this happen? What does evolution require? It requires a lot of time. A ton of time. Because there has to be multiple generations, like many, 10,000 or more. So it's really hard to study evolution in our own lifetimes because we don't see it happening. We can study evolution in real life in the lab with things like bacteria, because they double every 30 minutes. Like these E. coli bacteria. So we're able to see 10,000 generations of E. coli bacteria happen within a few days, and we can study the changes that happen in those over time. Okay. We also need genetic variety. Genetic variety could be anything from our skin color, our hair color, our eyes, our height. Those are all genetic variations that we have. It could be the spots on your dog or the hair length on your cat. That's genetic variety. Okay. Some of that genetic variety comes from mutations. We learned about that in our genetics unit, how the changes in the DNA could get passed down, okay, or cause things to look different. Okay. Migration is also one where certain genes and genetic material travel when, birds travel, for example, to new areas, and they bring that genetics with them. Okay. They also need common ancestors. Common ancestors are members of organisms that have family members in common. So if you check this family tree out, you can see that these are the common ancestors. These grandparents are common ancestors to these cousins. Okay. So if you think about yourself, for example, if you have a brother or a sister, a sibling, who is your most recent common ancestor? Who do you have in common that came before you? It would be your parents, okay? But your cousins you share grandparents with. Okay. You also, for evolution to happen, it needs environmental pressures or changes. These changes, environments can change the creatures or the organisms. This could be anything from like temperatures increasing, temperatures decreasing, more rain, more snow. It could be rising sea levels. There's lots of different environmental changes. It could be more predators. Those are all examples of things that are changing around these different species. Okay, so let's look at some examples. So wisdom teeth. Little known fact that wisdom teeth, they had a purpose. They don't really have a purpose now. They kind of get in the way and they're annoying. They think that they were used, our ancestors used to eat really tough food and like tough fibrous grasses and leaves, and over the lifetime of our ancestors their teeth would wear down, and so we evolved to have these teeth that came out and helped us eat when we were 18 years old. Like most of our teeth come in before we are 12, and now they're coming in later in our life so that we have this extra set of teeth because our old teeth would kind of wear down and not be as useful. And so people who had teeth that worked in their and were good healthy teeth, they survived to pass on their genetics, okay, to their offspring. Same thing with these giraffes. So in like a giraffe population, you might have some giraffes that are shorter or taller than others, and the giraffes that were taller were able to reach the trees and eat more food, and if they could have enough food, they'd produce more offspring, and those offspring passed down their genes. Okay, that's an example of evolution happening over many, many generations. Now, remember that the giraffes aren't choosing to be taller. It just so happened that it's random, that the taller ones just had an easier time of it, so they were able to pass on their genes over and over again over thousands of generations. Okay, and there is also these rock pocket mice. Scientists study these guys because they're a really good example of some genetic variations that survive in different environments. So if you look at the top two mice, they're a lot more camouflaged. They're harder to see, and they would be picked out by predators a lot less. They wouldn't be eaten as often because they're harder to see. Whereas if this dark mouse lives on the sandy colored rocks, it's really obvious to spot, and he's going to get eaten. He's not going to pass on his genes to his offspring, and so you get areas where mice on the sand are tan and they survive, and mice on the rocks are black and they survive. But if you have the other mice on the opposite color rocks, then they don't survive as easily, and it's really hard for them to pass on their genes. Okay, so those are some examples. There's many more examples of evolution happening, and we're going to go and explore those more. For right now, I want to know what your questions are. Like, write some questions down. What do you think about evolution? What have you always wondered? Anything that you have heard about and asked, like, how do they even know that? What would you like to know more about? I just want you to be curious about this whole thing because it is amazing and beautiful, and we are going to learn so much more about this whole process in the next coming weeks.